Levi was irritable, and it hadn't taken long for Riala to figure out why. She'd seen her husband come home from the park with the kids the other day, and it had broken her heart. She'd wanted him to enjoy her homeworld. Everything should be safe here, but he'd gone out while she'd slept in a bit. If she'd been awake, she'd have gone out with him and given that woman a piece of her mind. But she hadn't. Sending him on a boys' night out had seemed ideal. Something to let him have fun without any women involved. Time with his father was always good for Levi. The bond between them was stronger than battle plate, and while she hadn't dreamed they'd both end up at the tide pool, getting him out had seemed like a good idea at the time.
Trust Eli to fuck that up. The whole house was in a mood last night.
Coming home, Levi's mood was even worse, but after comparing notes with her co-leaper Breen, Riala had kicked herself for not seeing it. They'd all been at the tide pool, which meant they'd all seen the same acts, including the one with the whip. Sure, everyone was ticked off at Eli. What else was new? But the whip act? As adult entertainment, it really wouldn't make his list. Still, one of the keys to a successful marriage with a human seemed to be that if you had to go to bed unhappy, then shake it off in the morning. Just as well, their alarm hadn't gone off yet, and there was still time for other things. Melody snuggled in on Levi's other side, so he wasn't going anywhere. Leaning closer, her tongue slid out and tickled his ear. Cheering up her man was something she and her co knew how to do.
Ree?
Levi groaned.
More sleep. Big day ahead.
Psst, Mel, what's pink and yellow and goes, ah? Melody slid her hand under Levi's nightshirt, stroking his chest. It was a tease, but it did the trick. She winked, and her smile was anything but innocent.
I don't know. What is it?
Sliding her hand down his body, Riala tickled the tip of her tongue along his neck.
Eli running for a brothel?
She wasn't sure if Levi's groan was pleasure or sleep deprivation. He stirred, trying to sink under the blankets, but there was no escape. Melody propped her head up on one hand while stroking a bit lower.
Hey, Ree, what's pink and yellow and goes, thump?
Levi didn't move, but she could see his eyebrows knit together.
Girls, you're supposed to sleep in on vacation.
Melody leaned in and kissed his shoulder lightly.
Eli running into the brothel?
Levi's eyes screwed shut tighter as he groaned. Don't go giving up your day jobs. Riala paused between kisses along his neck.
Hey, Mel? Mm-hmm. What's purple, laughs, and uses small hand gestures?
Melody started kissing down his shoulder towards his chest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was only fair to join in.
A brothel doctor examining Eli?
Riala slid her hand slowly lower, meeting her co's on the way down. His next groan had nothing to do with comedy at all. Solanna groaned and turned off her alarm. It wasn't as if she was asleep. Not after last night.
Fucking Eli!
All the girls had come home together with Levi, Vadim, and Eli. She'd already felt pissy over missing the night out, but trust Trixis to paint a vivid picture. Eli was her best friend, and over the years they screwed up, screwed around, and screwed a lot. That part was good. Really good. They were friends with benefits. Buddies. They had each other's backs and other bits, even when things were rough. Still, when it came to anything more, as much as she hated it, her mothers did have a point. It wasn't something she'd given much thought to before, but this was shill. His constant screw-ups and nerve for one thing, but last night? Goddess!
Sure, I get around, but I know when to use my head instead of my clam.
Solanna pursed her lips and tucked the blanket up. It had nothing to do with how cold it was outside, and it didn't help.
Eli just doesn't. Why would I think he'd act any different here?
Not that Eli had ever been marriage material, but that was sort of irritating too. Not before, when they'd been growing up, but after Riala married Levi? That had stung. Then Trixis had gotten married, and that had too. After that, sponsored by Phrysis, Rhea's business with Melody and Levi had taken off. And then there were children. Of course, Trixis had to join them for the family holiday, and here they were sharing a room, and she was right at it, all over again.
Eli's no good for you. Heard that. You're already old enough to start a career and settle down. You sound like our mothers. He's a waste of time. Only sometimes. Where are you going to be when you're older? Lick me.
Trust her sister to beat a dead horse. She was so proud of being married. And that was great. For her. She'd married up too. A bit. And her career was going well. She and her husband were even considering settling down with another woman and having children.
And I'm still doing... what?
The aggravating thing was that Trixis was probably right. It might be time to make some choices. Last night was just another fuck-up, but... maybe it was time to leave some things behind. Not that Trixis was any help. Her whole idea of making a move on Vadim was stupid. So what if he wasn't a blood relative and was coming into his own business?
Keep the money in the family, she said.
So what if he wasn't even married yet?
You'd be the matriarch, and that's important.
As if Trixis would gloat about that.
You'd be a part of the family business, Solanna.
Well, there was something to that. Riala was everyone's perfect daughter, but it wasn't as if she'd have grandchildren. Not with Levi. It was galling that Trixis might be right. She spent years competing with her sisters, and with Eli too, after a fashion. They were so alike sometimes.
Why did he have to be such an idiot?
Vadim Dasari? He was 2 years younger. Not that it was much of a difference. As they got older, it wouldn't matter at all. And so what if he was cute, and had a big house, and no wives to deal with? And sure, it would make her mothers proud. So what if he could cook and lived on chill? Besides, it wasn't as if she didn't know how to get guys. Well, human guys. At least some of the skill had to transfer over to Shulvanti boys, right? How hard could it be? Anyway, the idea was ridiculous. Besides, he already had a girlfriend.
Not that she'd be any competition.
Tom stood at the bathroom mirror, shaving. The morning had been fun. A lot of fun. And on reflection, the make-up sex from last night had been phenomenal. As his mind roved over the day ahead, it seemed like addressing the elephant in the auditorium up front would be a good idea. Better than tap dancing around it with a room full of blushing girls all seminar long. Best to get it out of the way. Raising his toothbrush like a conductor before the mirror, he cleared his throat, drew a deep breath, and projected his voice out over his imaginary audience. Marriage Fundamentals. The new version as taught by a human. Chapter 1. Sex. Sex is great. Sex is a natural drive for your body. Hooray! You will eventually have sex, since you're all rich young women with bright futures and proportionally more chances of getting a guy than the average girl on the street. Congratulations! Sex! Woohoo! And now, stop blushing like the California raisins. Note to self, dated, alien reference. And let's be adults, because if you think sex doesn't play a part in relationships, you haven't thought past home plate. Note to self, see what the Shulvanti use in lieu of baseball. There has to be something. Tom tucked away the toothbrush and nodded at the mirror, which agreed wholeheartedly. Sex is also fun with more than one woman, particularly when they're tall, nubile, and perpetually willing. Side note, the prehensile tongues are phenomenal, though as Shulvanti you may take that as a given. Tom checked his chin in the mirror and pulled out his razor. He'd shaved before going out last night, but had missed a small patch. Note to self, have a second embarrassing conversation with Badine. Anyway, the great thing about being a human with Shulvanti women isn't just that. It's a matter of stamina. Shulvanti guys don't have it, and this morning would have taxed most of your future boyfriends past all endurance. Heck, at my age, it would probably kill one, so check your expectations in life as you go forward and love your partner for who he is. Shulvanti guys cannot do orgies. Side note, for the extra thirsty, you don't know what you're missing. Tom looked in the mirror and nodded, cleaning off the razor with satisfaction. Now, since you're all going to ask about me as a human, yes, the one thing better than sex with tall, fit, nubile-willing women with prehensile tongues is sex with two such women when they lack stamina. A human guy can go the distance with a human woman. They have stamina too, but with Shulvanti, that same stamina pushes me over the edge, from going the distance to sexual superstar with all the trimmings. Damn, it's good to be alive. Tom checked his teeth in the mirror and noted his satisfied grin. Okay, maybe edit that out of the class. This morning had been a great, wonderful, taxing, luscious indulgence. Miv and Leia were utterly spent, and he wanted to beat his chest. Of course, that brought him back to the topic at hand. Statistically speaking, you ladies will get, or become, the third partner, and if bedroom politics isn't there already, it will be. Particularly if your third partner is a Shulvanti Marine, with the strength to rip a phone book in half. Note to self, find a contemporary reference. Probably something with a Tyrox or a Grimshaw. Thank goodness Shulvanti bedrooms were heavily soundproofed. Still, it felt good to brag a little. Solanna hadn't entered his bed yet, but would soon. There had been a lot of cuddling and definite interest, but her cloned arm would be grown in 2 weeks, and she decided to wait. Okay, a couple of weeks wasn't a huge feat of abstinence for most people, but for a Shulvanti, note to self, make it special. Still, Miv and Leia had invited her. As you know, Shulvanti likes sleeping together. Not sex, sleep. You like central bedrooms and Empress-sized beds you could land a shuttle on, and you guys thrive on physical contact. Again, good, because an orgy would kill a Shulvanti guy. So, 3 is an easy woman-man-woman sandwich. 4, however... The point, class, is to show respect to your partners. Sharing is caring, which doesn't rhyme in Vatica. Do not be selfish lovers, particularly with a Shulvanti male, and learn to care for him if he looks tired. Do not roll over and crush. No, don't bring up weight. They're still girls. Do not be selfish about taking turns, and don't yodel like Tarzan. Tom leaned into the mirror and scowled accusingly. After my first night with Shalea, I know you've got a damn reference. Coffee time. Tom pulled on his robe and nodded in satisfaction. Faced with multiple partners, you have traditional social conventions, probably genetically hardwired, that come to your rescue, to stop you from fighting like cats in the sack, so you can form well-rounded, life-nurturing relationships with both your husband and your co-leaper Breen, who wanted your turn, so do not look smug. He offered generously to the empty hallway as he padded toward the kitchen. Anyway, there's a lot to explore about bedroom etiquette, like taking turns, if not in an orgy with a human, or being too loud. So learn to accept a gag gracefully if you start screaming to the deity of your choice. Other people want to sleep. It was best to get the idea of sex out there, because while Shul might handle things instinctively, a little planning could still avoid hurt feelings, and set the stage for a much better married life. It wasn't done in his head, but... I can workshop it. 20 or 30 minutes plus time for questions, and there will be a lot of questions. Tom strode down the hallway, following the rich aroma of coffee. Thankfully, his portable spare had one of those set-the-time functions, and while that took a bit of adjustment to the Shul time, it was only off by a few minutes. It was a good morning. Sex, coffee, and no work today, other than a bit of lesson planning. Marriage fundamentals, here I come. Tom rounded the corner into the kitchen and stopped short. Dressed in their pajamas, Deshin, Melondi, and the Kerbal twins had breakfast on the table and were blushing furiously. Sinshiki might have been too, but Fur had a wealth of sins and he couldn't see what her Asike was doing. Desi licked her lips, trying not to look up.
Good morning, Father.
The twins looked fit to burst, but Melondi rose to the occasion.
Good morning, Professor Warwick. You slept well? A good night out?
Tom double-checked the sash in his robe and strolled past, careful not to make eye contact with anything but the coffee. The back of his mind moved back to lesson planning, rather than starting to gibber. Marriage Fundamentals. Chapter 2. Teenagers. One day you'll have them. If you were embarrassed by Chapter 1, just wait.
Oh my goodness, this is so embarrassing.
Sitting in the kitchen reading a new message from Gumbri, Lark glanced over at Let'zi flipping for a picture folio. Her work was out. To be fair, she sort of lived in her work, and there sort of happened to be an apartment wrapped around it. It wasn't a large place, but it was affordable. The stairs up to her bedroom, small but livable/cramped, and bathroom, livable/too scary for company, looked over the lower floor, which was a living area, livable/clean, with a galley kitchen, livable/sparse. Along the hall to her front door was a guest bathroom, unused/livable, and a side room, livable/technically, she'd been using as a junk room. Tossed inside was all her extra stuff, allowing the rest of her place to be clean, as long as work didn't count.
Lark tried to stifle a yawn and failed. What's embarrassing?
The side room had a single bed, and she'd been a bit embarrassed, but Let'zi had sounded desperate. In hindsight, desperate might have fallen short of the mark. She was so happy at not being home it was telling. Let'zi was a nice girl, but always held herself back. A polite shadow of herself. Like someone who thanked you when the beating stopped, Let'zi seemed more thankful for the absence of hurt. It hadn't been obvious before, but it was now. Still, the Let'zi who moved in seemed to have come out of herself. She was filled with a vibrant energy and a sense of determination. At least, once Lark had made it clear that, yes, it was fine if she stayed, as long as she didn't move any of her work piles. Looking at the work was another matter.
This picture of Zenshiki in sweats? The ones where she made a hole for her Asaiak and it tore? That will never see print, but it's still funny.
Lark buried her face in her hands and tried not to laugh.
I swear, she has no body modesty except for that area where her tail meets her butt. Oh yeah, her thorbs. Right.
Lark set her tea down and they shared a grin. It was good to see on Let'zi. Whatever created her newfound confidence, it suited her.
I suppose if you're a whole family packed in one ship, body modesty isn't something you keep, but she's pretty particular about that. Not that I blame her, she is chasing a guy. I suppose.
Let'zi shrugged, her smile faltering, and Lark wondered if they'd hit a sore subject. The girl rallied, though.
A couple of the others said they've seen him. I have. He's in the professor's wedding footage.
Lark nodded to a pile on the side table.
Anyway, a documentary wouldn't be complete without her. I was surprised when Professor Warwick took her in, but, well, she's part of their lives now. Ours, too. It's better than her trying to eat him,
Let'zi snorted, setting the folio back on the pile.
Do the Pellavons know you're doing this? The school does, and my network does. But no, it may never get aired, but they thought it was worth taking a risk. And while I still hate the homework, this is a lot better than working night shifts on the backup news desk.
Let'zi ambled over to the kitchen counter.
Even economics? Maybe not that. I swear Professor Tandina hates people.
Lark grimaced and picked over her plate.
But the rest of it? Deeps, yes. The academy is so much nicer than where I went to university. I'm still blown away by that.
Let'zi shook her head, looking a little embarrassed.
I mean, right now? You have no idea how grateful I am and, well, everything. It's just you look our age. You're so, short.
Lark stuck out her tongue.
The word you want is short. It's not as if our ages are that different. Shopping later.
Changing the subject, Let'zi picked at her breakfast papaya.
What about, Melondi? Are you kidding?
Lark blanched at the memory.
I thought I was going to have heart failure when she found out. Now the network insists I stay, and the palace insists the story can't come out until 6 years after she graduates. But hey, it's job security.
Let'zi nodded in a perfunctory way and licked up the last crumbs of her papaya.
I wonder what she's doing now. I mean, with her sister and brother back in Chill.
Lark shrugged and flipped on the vid in the kitchen, where she watched the news. A few minutes on Network 23 was all they needed to find out.
Well, that's going to be interesting.
Let'zi bit her lip as Lark switched off the morning news.
Isn't she spending time with Vadim's family? Oh, we're going to find out.
Lark pushed her tea aside.
Grab your uniform, because we're going back to school.
Belda settled back in the chair and regarded her friend.
So, let me get this straight. You just got here and now you want to go back? I'm not leaving Willist, just going to the city.
Pris nodded once.
Vardosh? Vardosh.
Belda pursed her lips, then looked over at Liam, who shrugged unhelpfully.
And you won't even tell us why? That's right.
Pris leaned forward and nodded.
I promise. It's nothing to do with being here, or with you, Liam, or your family. I have something I've got to do, and it's not something I can discuss. Did someone say something wrong? I mean, I know we took off on you this morning, but It's not that. Belle, I promise. Everything is great here.
Brisala tugged at a lock of her hair and smiled reassuringly. Belle's situation was anything but reassuring, but she didn't know it, and Pris wasn't going to give her the bad news.
Particularly if I can fix things, and I just may.
Shulvanti law was clear on everything, broadly. Every world's legal system had variations that covered local circumstances, but business was business, and the laws governing finance in the great houses were etched in titanium across the Imperium. While law school still beckoned after graduation, Priscilla already knew the law. Her mother, Idaris, was a recently retired magistrate who wrote for the Legal Review, while her co-mother, Fayerin, was a barrister. Every evening over dinner, they'd argue points of law and legal tricks. Her co-mother, Vanda, who worked in Atherton's civil service, usually sat in judgment, though she and her sister sometimes served as a jury. It made for lively dinners. In hindsight, it was sort of like the way Professor Warwick taught, with constant questions and answers that led to new questions. She lived and breathed the law growing up, with all of its particulars, and learned all the scams. What was going on with the Solanna ranch had all the earmarks of a scam, and not a particularly clever one. How do you tell your best friend that her family is being ripped off? That was one thing. How did you tell her it wasn't even a good scam and they were being duped? That was another. The law was complicated, and even the brightest people could be legal simpletons, but no one liked being told that. She liked Belle and Liam. A lot. Creating bad blood with Belle's family had little appeal, and explaining how she stumbled across their private affairs had none at all. But with a little luck and a few days in town, she might not have to.
I need you to take this on faith, Belle. I'll just get a room at a hotel in the city.
Priscilla held up her hand, forestalling the budding protest on Belle's face.
It should only be a few days. With luck, I'll be back by the end of the week with time to enjoy the rest of Avrovi with you both. You promise it's not my family?
Belle frowned, not ready to let go of the point.
I swear to your household goddess.
Craig, Belda supplied, looking only slightly mollified.
Craig?
Pris canted her head.
Really? Life and death are important on a ranch.
Belda stuck out her tongue.
And have you seen any oceans around here? Fair enough.
Pris placed a hand over her heart and gave her voice the sonorous authority her mother's favoured in court.
I swear by Craig, this has nothing to do with you, your family, my room, Liam, Willis itself, or the holiday. Fine. Belda huffed and tossed her hair, the long raven locks flowing over her shoulder. I'll tell my family something, but don't expect make-up time on Liam when you get back. While tired from his day out, Liam roused in his chair. Don't I get a say in that? Nope, Belda chirped happily. Anyway, we have some busy days ahead, so do what you have to by next week. I'm going to teach Liam how to ride a rigori before we move the herd into the higher pastures. Pris watched Liam deflate into his chair, his expression inscrutable. And after we get that done, it's time for the big dance. Pris wasn't much for dancing, even if Liam was teaching her. Still, what Belle had in mind was probably light years away from any nightclub. So, a week. If it was what she suspected, then a week would do. Maybe. Seeing Liam brighten made up her mind. Sure, I'll be back in a week. What's the worst that could happen?
The tour wasn't the worst. That came later. As Kalira, third daughter of the Empress, she'd grown up in the vast Imperial palace, but there were still portions she was unfamiliar with. Not because the complex wasn't immense, but because of the portions open to the public. The golden foyer, with its gilded tile, amber walls and pristine marble columns, was something you only walked through during events. The rest of the time it was open to the public, there to make an impression. As they moved through the gallery of Shamantal, the sun shone down into a platinum corridor, which reflected its light 1,000-fold. She had to admit it was kind of an experience. Seeing her home as a visitor felt surreal. She hung on to Vadim and let it all pass by. It was quality time with his family, and that mattered, even if his cousin, Solanna, seemed to be hovering about. Kalira knew her role as Melondi, but the more she had to do with Solanna, the more it began to feel like a test from the goddess. It was one thing to understand condescension. She'd been thoroughly trained in deportment and interpersonal communication, and seen the nuances of the people you dealt with, at least as a matter of state. A woman would have to be blind to miss it in some nobles, and as she'd grown up, she'd come to understand her mother's preference for Lady Samilla. She learned to appreciate when people postured and jockeyed for prominence, and even to laugh about it later with Lady Wakama. Being condescended to, though? That was something else, and while Solanna Dasari hadn't dived into the pool, she stuck her toe in the water more than once, and it was pissing her off. A lot. No one had ever interrupted, stepped in, or brushed her off before. Not only that, as the day rolled on, she had the feeling Solanna was taking a claim. The imposition! The nerve! Talking down to her just because she claimed to be a scholarship girl? No one had ever spoken to Desi like that. Desala had sometimes managed snide, and was uncomfortably close to insufferable, but that was with everyone. She knew her boundaries. There were things she would never say or do. Particularly with another woman's boyfriend. The worst part was being unable to defend herself. Despite a growing urge to put Solanna in her place, she knew that she couldn't attract attention or risk a scene. Of all the places she did not want to blow her cover, it had to be here. The embarrassment of being caught out would reach historic proportions. Besides, telling her off would cause problems with Vadim's family. It wasn't diplomatic, it wasn't mature, it was not an option. The only redeeming factor was that Solanna was so utterly lacking in subtlety. I still want to smack her with a glaive. She reminded herself that it was just a tour. A princess projected calm and kept her head while all around, others were figuratively losing theirs. You exuded self-control. What was the worst that could happen? The answer appeared in the form of a robed Vizier, who beetled toward them.
Are you the party of Dame Dasari, by chance?
She drawled out, as she blinked against the reflected sun.
I am Assistant Vizier Tavi.
The woman bent low in a jerky double bow, her sleeves flapping with all the grace of a wounded prother,
I'm ever so delighted to meet you.
Lady Wakama did not believe in fate. A sensible woman prepared for the unknown, which was why she'd perched herself in Security Central that morning and taken a seat as if she owned it. No one was going to fight her on the matter. Princess Kalira was in residence, in an unconventional manner, but it was true all the same. That made it her duty to see that everything went smoothly. Her charge enjoyed the day, and that under no circumstances was her cover compromised. Kalira's group was just leaving the Shamantal Gallery, and everything was going perfectly normally. Wakama was almost ready to breathe easier when she saw it. Upper monitor free, there was no mistaking the figure that flung herself into an ungainly bow.
Tavi,
Wakama winced, but she was already heading for the door.
I swear, I'm going to kill you.
Phrysis Dasari blinked in surprise, but the ears on Earth had inoculated her to the unexpected. You couldn't live there and not see something odd at least every other day. Still, the woman, still bowed double before them, looked ready to wait until she got an answer. Or fell over. The second option looked more likely.
I'm Dame Dasari. Can I help you?
Why, I am here to help you. I am Assistant Vizier for Public Services, and have the pleasure of seeing the palace tours. With Her Royal Highness not in residence, I thought I would extend my services personally. I wanted to make certain you received the best of care for your visit. After all, one has heard stories of your work. That is, well...
I had no idea that anyone knew about my work on Earth.
Earth?
Vizier Tavi licked her lips.
Of course. Earth is a focal point for much speculation amongst the royal court. A veritable wellspring of...
Her mouth worked silently for a moment.
Culture, unique and novel, this Earth, and full of Earthlings.
She paused, her eyes playing across the assembled group.
But you would know more of that than I. Come, observe the glories of the royal palace laid bare.
What followed was a whirlwind, albeit unconventional, tour of the inner workings of the palace. Akatai was quite impressed by the kitchens. Jennifer was equally impressed by the larder. Levi and Miara shared a good deal of admiration for the armory. Elijah and Hannah were both intrigued by the surveillance center, though it seemed for very different reasons. The highlight of the tour was passing by the Corona Suite, shrouded as it was in mystery and rumor. It was said to have gilt ebon panels and a jewel in the ceiling for every major star system of the Imperium. Cascading with light, the suite was a masterpiece of elegance and power, though no one would ever see. The Empress's husband lay entombed inside. The suite remained locked and barred. Before its doors was the small bed where the Empress had remained, listening day and night as his screams for release and pleas for help turned to whispered groans, then only silence. No one would enter those rooms while the Empress lived, yet the dusty bed remained as a mute testimony to those terrible days. Rather than order another to seize her husband, she had delivered his punishment personally. Day and night she had stayed there, barring the doors as he cried out for mercy, and there she had suffered through every moment. A ghost story made horribly real. The Corona Suite was a chilling reminder that while Kamlesh was a woman, she was also the Empress. As Empress, she had suffered what no woman ever should. All things considered, it might be for the best if its doors were never opened. After that, young Miss Malondi seemed progressively more motivated to find a bathroom. The suite's chilling effect on the men in the group was surely understandable, but the poor thing's distress became awful just as they were heading toward the portrait gallery. It was a shame, but there was nothing to do but to end the tour, and just before seeing the gallery too. The portrait gallery was a glorious monument to the arts, with every empress depicted true to life by the greatest talents of her age. The earliest were busts of solid amethyst with gilded eyes, while others were displayed in everything from actual paintings to modern holograms. It was a terrible shame to miss, but Vadim became distraught over the slip of a girl, and that wouldn't do. Still, What a day.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that.
Phrysis beamed proudly, as the family stepped back into the crisp afternoon air.
Just think, a special tour for us.
She nudged Zachariah with an elbow.
It's good to know our work isn't going unnoticed, huh?
Zachariah looked back at the edifice and gave a hesitant nod. Guess so. The Imperial Palace certainly made an impression. Why, even Vadim's girlfriend looked stunned. Thankfully, Solanna was there on his other side, treating him solicitously. Clearly, their trip to Tshirt was having a proper effect.
I'm so glad you enjoyed yourselves, but we're only getting started.
Phrysis turned and beamed to the group.
As a special treat, I have tickets for the commencement address at Orinka Stadium. Both princesses and the prince are supposed to be there, and I have tickets for all of us. Vadim, you can even bring young Melondi.
The girl looked speechless. She was clearly unused to such rarefied surroundings, but it was Erovri Salar after all. The first of 4 galas marking out the holiday, and the commencement speech was almost spectacular. Inviting her along was the right thing to do. One had to be gracious.
Won't that be nice?
Thomas Steinberg always assumed when you came from a world where men were in short supply, your fantasies tended to be straightforward. Get man, have sex. When you lived in a world where men were plentiful, that just made more elaborate fantasies. When he and Avi had started dating, and they discussed what they were into. Tom had gone off on a ridiculous tangent about how one of his fantasies was to someday go into the woods, kill a reeks, drink its blood, and do the deed while wearing its skin. There had been a skinwalker mask involved. He'd been lucky Avid had found it funny. They still hadn't done that yet though, so every so often he tried to see if she was in the mood to get a little kinky. Certainly it had seemed like a better alternative to her fantasy, though he'd kept the scuba suit. This current situation was eerily similar. Scuba diving in freezing water? Check. With a half-naked cat girl? That was something else, just not something he'd share with Avi. Tom was sure the anime had something to do with it, but he'd had this exact fantasy as a teenager, only with a lot more drugs. Oh, and there was lots of monster magnet playing in the fantasy.
A point of light flies through my head, a scary thought like I was someone else, and you don't get lost now and show no fear, and you'll be ready for a new frontier.
That made this part of the planning phase extremely weird, however. As the most skilled scout among them, he maintained that Pat Veery was going to have to be the one under the water. Sure, he could have done it, and to be fair, he was going in too, but he was planting the bomb. His days terrorizing the Stamantios family had taught him how to sink a fucking boat. 2 people were necessary, so either she went or the job was off. Her reactions probably had more to do with admitting failure, but even so, it wasn't going over easily.
Not happening,
Pat Veery hissed. Honestly, Tom hadn't been surprised. Cats and water got together like, well, cats and water.
Alright, then let me put it this way.
Tom was getting pretty good, this whole dangling the bait on the hook thing. You don't dive into that water, someone else gets to steal that glorious and very valuable chandelier, plus whatever other treasures are laying about. I have a whole gang of lunatics helping out. Tom was great at these little carrot and stick games, but a good carrot, when wielded properly, could be a proper stick all of its own. They do the work, and you can find another hack. It may have been dangerous to do, but Tom squeezed Pat Veery's shoulders, right where they connected to her neck. As he did, he bet on the fact of a hack commanding respect.
Just think how great you look to your bandmothers, bringing in the prize like that. Your sister? Damn it, she'll respect you now. How could she not?
Tom couldn't tell whether Pat Veery was purring because of the motion of his thumbs, or the thought of stealing Shinjiki's thunder, but if he had to bet, it was a little of both. He was pretty good with his hands. Avi could attest to that.
I'll see about getting you a wetsuit.
Fur compressed, so Tom figured he'd better go down a size or 2 when he ordered the thing. All you have to do is dive into freezing water in the middle of winter, at night. Pausing a moment, Tom realised what he'd just said. This is my ticket out of being her personal Yoda, so why am I talking her into it? Dear Lord, I've lost my marbles. Pavis Clips Cosreen was snoozing the day away. After going around in circles with the publisher, some twink working for some subsidiary of some corp for some house had the nerve to call and let her know that the Happy Pezrin Funshine Band was not going to air. Despite all the good feelings for her contributions with the Curious Clue crew, the company felt it was in their best interests to vet future adaptations of intellectual properties. Clip sent back a message that people still loved the Clue crew. The company acknowledged this, but it strongly desired to avoid a perception of bias against the Rakiri people, and the Clue crew had to be viewed with a certain sensitivity. The depiction of a cowardly Rakiri motivated by gluttony was poorly received, and if she wanted to press for further residuals regarding the Clue crew, she could be in touch with their legal firm. Clips wrote back to argue that the Happy Funshine Band had no cowardly characters, and since Pezrin weren't a well-known species, who could reasonably complain? The company replied that after airing the pilot, it was clear that Pezrin could, since a severed ear appeared in the mail. If she wanted to press for further settlement regarding the Happy Pezrin Funshine Band, she could be in touch with any convenient Pezrin warband. After browsing through the Traveller's Guide, Clip sent back a free-word memo that still acknowledged the company's point. The company replied that the feeling was mutual. Seeing no future in children's entertainment to fall back on, Clips went back to the thing she knew best, and found the time away had been good for her. She was hungry, which was a given considering her moribund figure, but she had missed the thrill of the chase. Her Tom Warwick project took a back seat to her financial woes, but it wasn't long before she hit payday. A hot tip had taken Clips downtown, just in time to catch Brove Aladonna, a rising Hollywood actress, throwing up mint in a potted plant while fondling herself and trying to go down on her date behind the concierge desk. After publication, Aladonda's husband very publicly filed for divorce, and Bro's part was written out of the series, though she made a pose that her new fave in Plutara would re-energize her career. Parts remained thin on the horizon, though she managed to land a pillow commercial. It didn't matter. Brove had been an up-and-coming woman. As future A-list material, the picture landed Clips a cool 5,000 credits. It felt like old times, and after purchasing a telephoto enhancer she'd had her eye on, Clips dove headfirst back into the torrid nightlife of the capital, with a fervour that had nothing to do with Plutara. Restored to her seedy domain, Clips's hours reflected her vocation, so she was still mildly comatose when her omnipad rang in the afternoon. Roused from slumber on her couch, with her left hand still in a bag of bagoon puffs, and a half-eaten Turox Mega Bouncer wrap still perched on her stomach, she pulled out her omnipad and blearily recognized the number. Dukdra Bradoon, an erstwhile animal control specialist with a taxidermy fetish, was not on her shit list right now, but the bitch had not called for ages. That was a mixed blessing, but the wrapper pulled open, leaking cold, oily buka sauce down one thigh, and it pissed her off. "Well, where the fuck have you been?" Clip snarled into the omnipad, then growled again. Residual buka sauce on her left hand smeared a greasy film on the omnipad, and it took her 3 swipes to put it on speaker. "Nice manners. I've been busy, but I'm calling as promised." Dukdra's snort broke into a hacking cough, but after a moment she came back on the line. "Anyway, what's your problem? I thought you were going to be a queen bitch in entertainment and too busy. Another deal for a new show? What happened?" "Yeah? Well, every fucking hypothetical I come up with, I don't want to say out loud, so how about we settle on go fuck yourself?" Clip snarled, but latterly fingering one of the bagoon puffs still inside the bag. "So what's the deal? You called. Who fucking Ray? Am I supposed to be all teary-eyed you finally called?" "Hey, don't be like that. I have shit to do." Dukdra paused a moment, and the on-the-pad carried the sound of her spit with high fidelity. "Look, I got the gig I promised. Do you want to come along or what? Gig? What do I look like to you, you pouchadillo pal? Clips poured out one of the greasy spice puffs and gave it a connoisseurial evaluation. The salt rolled under her fingers, but the bluish cheese coating still seemed solid. You finally remember I'm alive and now you want something? That's when you called to talk to me? No sweat on my tits. You want some camera time at the Northern Palace or what?